At dusk, the sun descended, and I knew it would be the last sunset I'd ever see. Through the cold metal bars, I saw the faces of those who had come to watch me die. Some were excited by the thought, practically gloating in victory. Others curious, and some with a sadistic gleam in their eyes. All their prayers for my demise had finally come true. The Scarlet Woman would now be out of their way. And some solely enjoyed the sport of seeing members of the nobility being taken out. One of the rare times they could have their revenge. Already wishing for my body to be broken horribly. How many would rush to grasp my remains to take home as trophies? Or for spells? For grim mementos of my final moments of suffering? A sorcerer would pay a pretty price for my body parts. Whispers of what I was filled the court. A sorceress, a harlot, a shapeshifter. They weren't wrong in their accusations. A woman cursed me and spat close to the bars, while others glared at me while they walked past. Growing whispers of hostility, a way none would have dared speak to me in the past. I doubted the guards would bother to hold them back. How many prisoners would share my fate tomorrow? How many innocents? My hand, scarred and bleeding, gripped the cold bar in place of the soft, delicate one I once had during better times, yanking it back when my skin sizzled. The bars had been specially installed for me, lined with silver to prevent my escape. Cradling them on my lap, I could see the outline of my bones, and any movement caused sharp pain to shoot through my hands. The wounds would heal, reopen, and heal again, only for the cycle to repeat. The process was incredibly draining. Broken, each finger had been pulled out, damaging the joints. My hair, previously waist-length, clung to my skull in sparse clumps. Bloody sores coated my head, and I could feel my face had been misshapen. My right eye swollen. It was difficult to see out of it, and I was too frightened to look. I was drained from the silver, and my injuries couldn't heal properly. Looking away, refusing to permit my last memories to be of them. I didn't want my last memories to be riddled by thoughts of their cruelty. I tried not to think about them, and ached to feel the wind on my skin one last time. A simple freedom I've been denied for months. I remembered being arrested while walking in the palace gardens. It was a warm day and the flowers were in bloom, a shock to those around me. I thought it was a ploy to draw out the king's enemies, and soon I would be released. Lifting my weary arms, the metal chains made a clinking sound as I pulled on them, only to smack back down once more. I had no strength left, both around wrists and ankles, lined with silver. Starvation, sleepless nights, and a haunting daytime had taken their toll on my body and soul. Perhaps death would have been a blessing after all I have endured. I wondered how many of my new friends would attempt to speak for me, to protect me, or who would try to aid me in escaping. Thus far, none had come through. Resting my back on the grimy stone wall, I gazed up at the night sky and longed to be outside. Through Luna's gift, a temporary reprieve would be found, free from the burden of humanity. Not yet a full moon, imagining the cool night air on my body, caressing my limbs and running free, unburdened by all troubles. Memories of running through the nearby forest, under the splendor of the moon, feeling Luna sway, moving in both my forms, human and Lycan. Euphoria running through my body, freedom from my situation. Any situation. I'd draw my lover close. Our bodies would entwine, and for a time, we would know bliss together. A sacred truth of who we are. I'd lay unburdened by clothing under the moonglow, absorbing her power, and our bodies would become one, free from the obligations of our mortal lives. Luna, powerful as she was, could not shield me from the brutal reality of where I am. Whimpers, screams, and cries of innocence echoed throughout the prison, forcefully bringing me back to reality. Looking over, I saw a scullion with her hand down a guard's pants, no doubt attempting to earn an early release. His coarse moaning made my final hours even more tedious. At least they left me alone, fearing I would curse them. Even now it was difficult to drown them out. The horrors had become my new normal. My body tensed when I heard footsteps behind me, and I prayed the guards would take a final visit. It would mean my death. I'd die before they touch me, but not before I tear their throat out. They got closer. The jagged remains of my fingernails dug into my skin, and I closed my eyes tight. The keys jingled. The door opened, and they said nothing to me. A wooden tray was placed on the floor of the cell. A fresh bread roll and folded envelope with a goblet of the finest wine. I stared at it skeptically. At first, any visitation to my cell was respectful, until they discovered that I had fallen out of royal favor. Why did they suddenly return to better etiquette? How I recognized the aroma and longed for the expensive items of my station. I pulled the tray toward me, rested my hands on it, and still my gestures were slow. I lifted the goblet, staring into the liquid, and seeing my brutalized reflection. My beauty was gone. I smelled the fragrance. It masked a thinly veiled poison. Hemlock? And a hint of valerian, I believe. Yet there was an undernote. Something else. Arsenic? Yet there was another thing that lingered. An aroma I have never smelled before. Probably another poison. A small note was hidden underneath. Deciding to save that for later, I opened the envelope. The wax seal and lack of mark on the paper suggested it was from the king. Cold and official. Staring at the letter, it wasn't even written by his hand, but by one of his scribes. Different from the man I knew, or thought I knew. I would receive no pardon. The execution would go as planned. I opened the smaller, hidden note. The writing was more sporadic, and it was a relief to finally read his. I couldn't help but smile when I recognized it. Memories flooded back of all the love letters I received, bathed in rose water, and kept as personal keepsakes, hidden inside a box, concealed inside a wall. This letter so unlike the others. It said that he loved me, and he was being blackmailed. The more I read, the more I realized his answers were excuses. Pure cowardice. The Dukes, an alliance forged by the Duke of Arundel, had discovered his secret. A malediction from a long-lost ancestor, and were hoping to expose him, cursed by the devil, and thus unfit to rule. They set a trap for him, and gave him a choice: get rid of me, or lose his crown. I remembered cautioning him about their advice. Our bodies pressed together in the hallway of his castle, his back on a tapestry of a victory of his great-grandfather. My hands cupped his cheeks, feeling his beard under my fingertips, urging him that once this occurs, they will demand more. It would risk him, his children, and his legacy. The secret, the same one that had brought us together. Flipping over to the other side, eyes straining in the dim light, the memory faded, as did my fond smile. My eyes scanned the words, feeling my heart sink. He told me he couldn't bear to watch me die. The wine was poisoned. I would drift off to sleep and wouldn't wake up. I'd feel no pain before I passed. One last mercy. He believed the same secret that would condemn him would also fade away. He was protecting his children and prayed I would understand. I wasn't going to ask to see him formally, nor attempt to escape. If he wished for me to die, then it would be so. My hand squeezed the note, crumbling it in my hand, only to discard it on the floor, and ignored both bread and wine. Let someone find it to use against him. He couldn't even tell me himself, nor come see me one last time before the end. My back pressed on the cold wall of the cell, my arms wrapped around my torso to keep the warmth in. Despite my cracked lips, I no longer felt thirst nor hunger. A pair of rats fought over the bread while I idly watched. I would greet him the next day, alert and unfazed. I didn't sleep that night, my memories of my rise still fresh. I had been adored, cherished, and prized before catching the eye of the king. We danced, drank, and had merry times, while the queen looked on in understandable frustration that brewed to hatred. Their political union had brought no happiness to either of them. An alliance of nations, not of love. I was too caught under his spell, his smile, and I willingly spied on his enemies, gathering information to secure his throne. And finally, he realized how this was making him appear to others. I was ensnared in a political plot, thrown in prison, a relatively pleasant one, with the promise of rescue, only to receive none. Months passed, until time no longer mattered, and I was transferred to this cell, where I rot away. My threats to the guards no longer having any weight. They had only resulted in laughter at my expense. No tears would be shed for the king's discarded harlot. None of my family came to see me, nor any friends or supporters who had risen with me along the way. I was left alone with my thoughts. I must have drifted off when I realized the sun was creeping over the horizon, peering in through the window, and I groggily gazed up. Most people were still in bed, and it gave me time to wonder. I stared down at the wine and bread. Despite being gnawed on by the rats, it was still edible, and an option. Slowly the town was coming to life. My final day was just an ordinary one for the townspeople. A crowd of vendors sold their wares, while the scaffold was being set up. I wouldn't be the only one killed today, nor would I be the first. Instead, I was the last to die. I watched as filthy, chained wretches were let out, heads down and resigned to their fates, while some cried, their sobbing family members clinging to them, only to be pushed back by the guards. One, a young man, pushed the guard away, attempted to feebly fight, while the others were resigned to their fate. It was pointless. He made it only a few meters, then was brought back to the scaffold. 3 thieves were hung from the neck, one gasping and slowly choked, while the other 2 blessedly had their necks snapped. The crowd cheered happily, and soon more prisoners were brought out, and I recognized them. With their clothing, stained and damaged as it was, I could tell their fall from grace had been brutal. Traitors to the crown, the Duke of Arundel and others who sought to condemn him. It was bittersweet knowing that they would perish, the same ones I had helped bring to justice, only instead they met their fates with the axe, beheaded. The first lost his head quickly, while the others were slower, more brutal. The axe was blunt, and the headsman was becoming tired. I thought they'd cry out to the king for mercy, and to confess their wrongdoing, all in hopes of preserving the lives of their family members. Instead, only coarse and garbled voices rang out, when I realized their tongues had been cut out. Land, wealth, and titles were already gone, in the hands of another, no doubt. A new favorite now rewarded. I smiled bitterly to myself, knowing that I was at least successful. This time it was bloody. They were drawn and quartered, their intestines pulled from living flesh, and while they nobly tried not to scream, the screams came. A waterfall of horrific wails as their skin was broken and watched while they were castrated. The executioners holding it up to the crowd, who let out a roar of insults. Their limbs were cut off and placed in carts nearby, no doubt to be taken all over the kingdom. And I wondered whether my head would be displayed from some bridge or fortress. "It is time," was all a guard said, and waited for me to stand. He didn't rush or try to hurt me. I said nothing. My hands trembled, and I regretted not drinking the poison. Dying was one thing, but to the jeers of a crowd was another. Once I stepped out, I heard taunts condemning me, even by those who had previously desired my favor, and others that blurred into one. I kept my gaze focused on the scaffold, a dreaded place that had become my refuge. Something struck my shoulder, nearly knocking me back, and then another. The guards cleared a pathway and struck the more pushy of their ranks back, threatening them with their swords. I knew the king would be here, either openly or in secret, and I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me weep for him. I saw others in the crowd who had been my rivals, people I didn't offer support to, or simply wanted to see me die. I had no one left to worry about. "Do you have any last words?" the grim voice asked me, and the crowd silenced themselves. Peasants standing close to the platform, already coated in blood and final movements of the previous victims, while the nobility stood behind them on a stand, away from the stench of the lower classes, silently, with only an idle cough ringing out with them, granting me silence. I was surprised I was given the chance to speak at all. "Your king, our king." My throat was dry, cracked, and it was difficult to speak. Still, I pushed on. My eyes betrayed me and instantly sought him, wishing he would save me as I had rescued him. I saw him staring up at me in the crowd. He stood among the peasants, in disguise, unwilling to let his mourning be public or face the nobility. Warm eyes stared up at me, a tear in them, while his face remained stern, only for his top lip to lift when a kiss was placed on his cheek. His latest spy standing at his side, a wicked smile on her lips and a feeling of rising anger at the betrayal took hold. "He's in control of me." I pointed my finger at him. "He is the devil. The king bears the mark of the beast. The men who died earlier were innocent men, put to death for a tyrant." I loved how some stepped away from him, and he backed away in surprise at my gesture. A stranger pulled back his cowl to reveal his face, and the guards, now alarmed, started to move toward him, to surround him in a protective perimeter. "There! He stands among you. He is a beast that turns at night. A curse pledged with a devil, and here he condemns me. If it was to be my end, it would also be his. I saw the king's eyes turn yellow, shaped like a beast's, and I knew the change was coming. A cold anger in them. A low growl lingered in his throat. The spy at his arm noticed, releasing it, and stepping back with her eyes wide in fear, realizing my accusations, and the whispers were true. Unlike me, he couldn't control the change. The moon and intense emotions rose. It took him seconds before his form ripped through his clothing. Slate-colored fur peeked through flesh. His shoulders and arms grew larger, and a wolf-like head with savage, fierce fangs were bared. Unable to control himself, or without my soothing whisper in his ear, the Lycan madness claimed him. His jaws clamped down on the spy's neck, sending a spurt of blood into the air and tearing the skin, dropping her, leaving her clinging to life under the terrified crowd. There was a symphony of gasps, screams, and overall sounds of frightened people. It was difficult to focus on any particular thing. I knew I could have used this time to escape, conceal myself, and flee out into the forest. They'd never catch me there. The captain, his friend, one of the few who knew his secret, moved forward unarmed to attempt to restrain the king, before he too found his flesh meet with fang. The king bit down on the metal plate, crushing the captain's shoulder and causing his left canine to crack and break off on the armor, and shaking his head. The captain's fear-riddled face, still unwilling to hurt his friend, and tried to hold him back. He called for someone to assist him, pleading with his majesty to stop, only before a bloody gurgle escaped his lips, when his throat was slashed by wicked claws. I gazed in awe. My lover had been quite the hunter. The guards, with their shields and swords ready, stood in front to protect the populace, and without a chain of command, it descended into panic, each fleeing to find their family in order to protect them from the danger. The crowd, overwhelmed with the sight before them, started fleeing in all directions, and making it harder for the guards to do their jobs. Briefly, I knew his children and even his wife would now be in danger, blighted by the association with their father. I hoped those innocents would escape in time. Some were knocked down onto the ground, bruised and battered while they tried to stand, only to be shoved down again. I'm not sure how many perished, or would later die from their injuries. The king leapt onto the scaffold, knocking 3 of the guards to the ground in the process, and snarled at me. The executioner raised his axe, only to be thrown back. The silver-plated shackles at my wrists and ankles stopped the change, my skin burning intensely, only causing my body to weaken. It longed to join him, to hunt and be free of our humanity. No words were spoken, the love he had for me now gone. I was a threat, and thus I had to die. I stood waiting for his revenge, eyes closed in content. I could feel the heat from his breath, and knew he was close. "You're finished. I warned you. If I fell, you would too." I whispered through clenched teeth at him. The betrayal had been too much. My moment of victory was short-lived. I was knocked down, and his teeth bit into my head and neck, slicing into skin and crushing my windpipe. I felt something snap inside me. My limbs jerked, and the strikes attacking him caused him to drop me. My sight blurred, and the eternal slumber of death beckoned me. I heard tales of Lycans being called to the afterlife, with loud howls of other Lycans who had come before. Yet none sang for me. Clinging to life, desperate for survival. It hurt, but not as much as the arrows fired into his back. He jerked upward with a loud bellow, a sharp backhand sending two of his knights flying and causing them to fall backward. He was a strong man, and thus an even stronger Lycan. One of these knights picked up his sword, driving the tip into the king's neck, and soon others joined him, stabbing into him with swords, while others held him in place with their halberds. It took multiple men to bring him down. I heard him being stabbed, and a ghastly, animalistic scream came from him. I stared, my face in a pool of blood, when I heard his final howl of agony. A passing regret coursed through me. I had been the cause of his death, his fear now realized. Red clouds circled the sky, and a blood moon peeked through, casting a warlike shadow over the land. I was unsure which god decided to cast their wrath on the people. The world drooled on around us, a moment in time that would never be lost. His corpse lay beside mine, the broken shafts of spears hanging from his body. The injuries returned him to a man. Without his fur, I could see the extent of the damage, and a surprisingly innocent look on his face. His lips moved. I'm uncertain what he was attempting to say. Yet I smiled. Nothing else mattered except him and I. Already those bitten were starting to turn. Fur came from their bodies, and the brutal first transformation caused some to die. I had a feeling it would happen. I ignored the chaos surrounding us, weapons protruding from his body, the final tremors of a life no more, and a vacant stare in his eyes. Half man, half Lycan. Deep down, he was always more of a man than a Lycan. And ultimately, it cost him all he held dear. My hand rested on his cheek. If we couldn't be together in life, we'd be together in death. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers, and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.